Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart racing, because of a dream that felt too real? Not just a bad dream. I'm talking about something deeper, something that leaves a shadow hanging over you the entire day. Something that whispers, that wasn't just a dream. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story. A story about a boy named Brian. A story about dreams that bleed into waking life. And a story about a thing not quite human that waits for us in the dark. They called him Mr. Tattler. Now before we dive in, I have to warn you, this isn't a fantasy. This isn't a fun little horror story to tell your friends at a sleepover. This is a confession. A cry for help. A journal of dreams that should have never been remembered. And if what Brian said is true, then Mr. Tattler might be watching you too. It all started when Brian was just a kid. Like most children, he had dreams vivid once. But there was something strange about them. Something more real. He called it the Red Town. The streets were always empty. The sky was always red. Buildings stretched on forever, their windows black as if watching. Time didn't work there. Clocks were frozen. His footsteps echoed endlessly, even when he stood still. And yet, as terrifying as it sounds, Brian wasn't scared. Not yet. Because in the beginning, he thought it was just a dream. A strange, reoccurring dream. We've all had those, right? The kind where the world is the same, yet not. But then, things started to follow him back. He'd wake up remembering details too specific to be random. He'd draw the Red Town in his notebooks. He'd describe buildings he'd never seen before, only to find similar ones on the edge of town. And then came the first visitor. He didn't have a name back then. Brian didn't even know what to call him. A tall figure, dressed in a black suit. No face, no voice, just presence. He would appear at the far end of the street. Never walking, never moving, just there, watching. Brian didn't run. He just stared back. Night after night, the man returned. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther away. And always, that same feeling. As if Brian were being judged. He tried telling his parents. They laughed it off. Just a dream, they said. But Brian knew. Something was wrong. Deeply, irreversibly wrong. The dreams became longer. More detailed. The Red Town began to change. Shadows grew thicker. Doors began to appear where they hadn't before. And always, that man was waiting. Then came the knocking. It started as a sound in the dream. 3 knocks. Slow. Heavy. Knock. 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 He'd hear it echo through the Red Town. He'd follow it, hoping to find the source. But there was never a door. Only walls. Endless, red-stained walls. But one night, he found it. A door. Ordinary. Wooden. Chipped paint. He reached out. And the moment his fingers touched the knob, he woke up gasping. Frozen. Unable to move. That was the first time he experienced sleep paralysis. But it wouldn't be the last. Because after that night, the knocking followed him. Not just in dreams. In his room. At 3:03 a.m. 3 knocks. Knock. 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 He told himself it was the wind. The house settling. A branch outside his window. But deep down, he knew. He started sleeping with the lights on. He placed a chair in front of the door. He even taped his windows shut. But the knocking never stopped. And the man now had a name. Mr. Tattler. Brian didn't know where it came from. He just woke up one morning and knew. He didn't speak. He didn't move. But somehow, he always knew things he shouldn't. Brian had a nightmare where Mr. Tattler stood outside his house. He wasn't in the red town anymore. This was real. His actual street. His actual front yard. And Mr. Tattler was just standing there. Head tilted. Arms long, unmoving. Brian screamed. But no sound came out. He ran to his parents' room. But they weren't there. The house was empty. He looked out the window again. Mr. Tattler was closer. Still not moving. Still not blinking. But now, he was pointing. Pointing at the front door. Brian backed away, tripping over himself. He locked the bedroom door. Crawled under the bed. Then came the sound. 3 knocks. Knock. 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 From the other side of the bedroom door. And then, a whisper. If you tell them, I'll take your mother. Brian woke up screaming. His mom rushed in, asking what was wrong. He told her it was just a bad dream. He didn't mention the voice. He didn't mention the knock. He never told her about Mr. Tattler, because he was afraid it wasn't a dream anymore. That was the beginning of the end for Brian's innocence. The Red Town was no longer a strange fantasy world. It was becoming a second home, one he never wanted to visit. And Mr. Tattler, he was no longer just a figure in the distance. He was coming closer. Brian started to notice strange things. He'd hear whispering when no one was around. He'd find handprints on his window too tall to belong to anyone in the house. He'd see flashes of movement in mirrors, just out of frame. And the worst part? He started seeing Mr. Tattler during the day. Not fully. Just glimpses. Reflections. Shadows. The feeling of being watched. Always at 3:03 p.m. Just like the dreams. Brian became obsessed. He started writing down everything he could remember. Mapping the Red Town. Sketching the Faceless Man. He filled notebook after notebook. And through it all, the knocking continued. 3 knocks. Always 3. Sometimes in dreams. Sometimes not. No matter what he did, he couldn't escape him. And that was just the beginning. Brian wasn't sure when exactly the rules started appearing. Maybe they were always there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for him to notice. But one night, in the dream, he saw them etched into the side of a crumbling wall in the Red Town. 10 simple rules. Faint, scratched in with something sharp. Blood, maybe. Or rust. He read them out loud in the dream, and when he woke up, he still remembered every single one. 1. Don't look behind you. 2. Don't talk to the statues. 3. Never open a door unless it opens for you first. 4. If you hear footsteps, run. 5. If you hear your name, don't answer. 6. If you see yourself, wake up immediately. 7. Don't go inside buildings with red curtains. 8. If the clocks start ticking, hide. 9. If he knocks, don't open. 10. If he smiles, it's already too late. Brian didn't know who wrote them. Maybe someone like him. Another dreamer who never woke up. He began to follow them. Every night, when he found himself back in the Red Town, he'd repeat the rules in his head like a mantra. It was the only way to stay alive. The dreams were no longer just dreams. They were tests. One night, Brian turned a corner and came face to face with a statue. It looked like a child at first. Pale, cracked skin. Hollow eyes. Its mouth stretched too wide, like someone had tried to carve a smile onto it with a knife. And then it spoke. "Brian," it whispered. He froze. The rule flashed in his mind. Don't talk to the statues. The statue tilted its head. He knows you're here. Brian backed away. He's closer tonight, it hissed. Closer than you think. He turned and ran. He didn't stop until he was back in the center of town, beneath the broken clock tower. That's when he noticed something new. The clock was ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Brian looked up. The hands were moving fast. Too fast. Rule 8. If the clocks start ticking, hide. He dove into the nearest alley, ducking behind a stack of metal crates. His breath hitched. And then, footsteps. Sharp. Rhythmic. Approaching. Someone or something was walking down the main road. Slowly. Deliberately. He didn't dare look. The steps paused. Then turned. Now they were walking straight toward him. Brian clenched his fists. Bit his tongue to keep from making a sound. Closer. Closer. Then silence. No more footsteps. Only breathing. Right above him. He felt the presence before he saw it. Cold. Heavy. Like gravity itself bent around it. He risked a glance. Nothing there. No footsteps. No figure. Just emptiness. He waited. Minutes passed. Hours, maybe. Then, the sun rose. And he woke up. He was soaked in sweat. His throat was sore from screaming, but he didn't remember doing it. He wrote down everything. The ticking. The statue. The voice. But he didn't write about the breathing. Somehow, it felt wrong. As if putting it into words would invite it back. That day, things got worse. He was walking home from school when he saw something in a store window. At first, he thought it was his reflection. But it didn't move when he did. It just stood there, watching. Wearing his clothes. Wearing his face. But the eyes were wrong. Empty. Dead. He blinked. It vanished. Rule 6. If you see yourself, wake up immediately. But he wasn't asleep. Not anymore. That night, Brian tried to stay awake. He drank coffee. He played music. He paced his room. But at 3:03 a.m., his eyes closed. And the red town was waiting. This time, the sky was darker. Almost black. The buildings leaned in, closer than before. He didn't walk. He didn't run. He waited. The footsteps came faster this time. So did the knocking. Not on a door but on the ground. Like something huge was crawling beneath the town, pounding its fists from below. Boom. 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 And then, silence. Brian turned. And there he was. Mr. Tattler. Closer than ever. His face was still a blur. Smooth, like melted wax. But now, there were eyes. 2 pinpricks of white light. Burning. And the faint trace of a smile. Brian tried to run. But the ground shifted beneath him. The red town was collapsing. Buildings folding in like paper. Streets curling into spirals. And Mr. Tattler. He didn't move. He didn't need to. He was already inside. Brian fell through the floor, plunging into darkness. He woke up screaming. His mom burst in. She said he'd been crying in his sleep. Kicking the walls. Whispering things. But Brian didn't remember any of it. He just remembered the smile. The next day, he didn't go to school. He searched the internet. Forums. Reddit. Obscure blogs. And finally, he found something. A post titled, "The Man Who Watches at 3:03. It described a dream. A place. A man in a suit. A town with red skies. Brian's hands trembled. There were others. Some called him the Watcher. Some called him the man behind the veil. But one name kept appearing. Mr. Tattler. People described the same things. The knocking, the mirrors, the rules, and most of the accounts stopped suddenly. Deleted. Abandoned. Brian messaged the authors. No replies. Their profiles were still active, but nothing new had been posted in years. He wasn't alone, but he might as well be. That night, he wrote his own post. He shared everything. The red town, the rules, the whispers, and at the end, he added a warning. If you hear knocking at 3:03 a.m., don't open the door, even if it's your mother. He hit publish, then turned off his computer. He tried to sleep in the living room. Lights on, TV playing softly. But at 3:03 a.m., the power cut out. Silence. Total darkness. Then came the knock. 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 His heart stopped. And then, Brian, his mother's voice, from the hallway. Sweetie, are you okay? Let me in. He didn't move. Brian, another knock. I'm worried about you. He wanted to believe it was her, but the voice was wrong. Too calm, too flat. And then he remembered the rule. If he knocks, don't open. He stayed silent. The doorknob rattled. The voice laughed. Not his mother's laugh. Low. Male. Cold. I'm getting closer, Brian. The knocking stopped, and the room went still. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. But the damage was done. Mr. Tattler knew where he lived.
And Brian knew. The dream was no longer just a dream. It was a doorway. And it had opened.
Brian tried not to fall asleep. He failed. It wasn't exhaustion. It was gravity. Like something inside the red town was pulling him back, dragging him. This time, he woke up in a room. Not outside. Not in the alleys or streets. A room with no windows. No doors. Only a chair. And on the wall across from him, scratched deep into the plaster, a phrase. The only way out is through him. Brian whispered it out loud. His voice echoed strangely, like the room was listening. Then the wall behind him opened by itself. He remembered the rule. Never open a door unless it opens for you first. This one had. So he stepped through. The hallway was long. Endless. Walls breathing in and out like lungs. He walked. The floor beneath him pulsed. The light flickered overhead. Then he heard it. Tick, tick, tick. The clocks. Brian spun around. There were no clocks. But the ticking grew louder. A door appeared at the end of the hallway. Tall. Wooden. Deep red. It had a symbol on it, a hand, covering an eye. He approached. The door creaked open. Beyond it was nothing. Just black. A void. But something moved in the dark. A whisper. A shape. A breath. And then asterisk. His own voice. Brian. Rule 5. If you hear your name, don't answer. He shut his mouth. The voice tried again. Brian? Help me. It sounded like him. Younger. Afraid. He backed away. The blackness began to pour through the door. Like smoke. Like ink. He turned and ran. But the hallway had changed. The walls were bleeding. The ceiling was collapsing. Tall. Wooden. Deep red. It had a symbol on it, a hand, covering an eye. He approached. The door creaked open. Beyond it was nothing. Just black. A void. But something moved in the dark. A whisper. A shape. A breath. And then asterisk. His own voice. Brian. Rule 5. If you hear your name, don't answer. He shut his mouth. The voice tried again. Brian? Help me. It sounded like him. Younger. Afraid. He backed away. The blackness began to pour through the door. Like smoke. Like ink. He turned and ran. But the hallway had changed. The walls were bleeding. The ceiling was collapsing. The ticking turned to screaming. Then silence. He woke up in his bed. But something was wrong. His bedroom door was open. He always closed it. Always. And on the floor, scratched into the wood with deep gouges. You let him in. Brian screamed. His mom came rushing in. What happened? He couldn't explain. Couldn't tell her about the door. Or the voice. Or the rules. She wouldn't understand. She never remembered her dreams. But Brian couldn't forget. That day, he checked the hallway. There were scratches outside his room. Long, deep. As if something with claws had dragged itself down the corridor. That night, he didn't sleep. He waited. 3:03 a.m. came. And so did the knock. Only once. Soft. Gentle. Then. Laughter. The same laugh from before. Mocking. Knowing. Brian sat in silence, gripping a baseball bat. The door didn't open. But in the morning, he found something on the floor. A tooth. Old. Yellowed. Human. No note. No explanation. Just the tooth. He flushed it down the toilet. But the next night, it came back. On his pillow. This time, there were two. Brian cried. He didn't know what to do. The rules were no longer enough. Mr. Tattler was coming through. The dreams bled into reality. Or maybe, reality was the dream. He began to lose time. He'd blink, and hours would pass. He'd wake up in different clothes. He found dirt under his nails. Scratches on his arms. Once, a word carved into his thigh, hollow. He stopped going outside. He stopped talking to his mom. He stopped eating. Then, one night, he saw it. A new door. Not in the dream. In his house. In the hallway where no door had ever existed before. Old wood. Red curtain. Rule 7. Don't go inside buildings with red curtains. He stared at it. It stared back. He touched the handle. Cold. Alive. He didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, he set up a camera. Pointed it at the door. Hit record. Went to bed. The next morning, the camera was gone. And in its place, a note. Typed. In red ink. You're already inside, Brian. He screamed. Threw the note. Burned it. But the words were burned into his mind. That night, he dreamed of a hallway. 100 doors. Behind each one, he could hear crying. And whispering. And laughter. He opened one. Inside, he saw himself. Older. Tired. Empty-eyed. Sitting in a chair. Staring into nothing. The older Brian turned slowly. Smiled. And said, "It never ends." Brian slammed the door. Rule 6. If you see yourself. But it was too late. The walls collapsed. The dream shattered. And he woke up in a hospital. White lights. Beeping machines. His mom beside him. They said he was found unconscious. Dehydrated. Malnourished. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. He didn't remember. But he knew one thing. He hadn't escaped. He was still dreaming. Somewhere, beneath the surface. He asked for a pen. He wrote down the rules again. Then he added a new one. 11. Don't trust the waking world. Because sometimes, the real nightmare starts when you open your eyes. Brian didn't remember falling asleep. But the moment his eyes opened, he knew where he was. Not his room. Not the hospital. Back. Red Town. Only now it was different. Colder. Emptier. Wronger. The sky wasn't red anymore. It was black. Pitch black. No stars. No moon. Just void. The air was thick. Sticky. Each breath tasted like rust and smoke. Brian stood on a street. The buildings leaned inward. The windows wept black sludge. There was a sound in the distance. Dragging. Scraping. And then, a bell. Dong. Once. Twice. The sound echoed forever. He walked. He didn't want to, but his legs moved anyway. The town was watching him. The walls whispered. His name. His fears. His secrets. Then he saw it. A mirror. Standing in the middle of the street. No frame. Just a sheet of glass, taller than him. He stepped in front of it. He expected to see himself. But the reflection was not him. It looked like him. Same face. Same hair. But the eyes were hollow. And it smiled too wide. It whispered, "He's waiting." Then the mirror shattered. The ground split beneath him. He fell. Fell for what felt like hours. Screaming into the void. Then impact. He landed in a room. The same one from before. No doors. No windows. Just a chair. And in the chair, Mr. Tattler. Brian froze. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Mr. Tattler was tall. Too tall. Thin like a shadow stretched across time. He wore a tattered suit, stitched with teeth. His face wasn't a face. It was a mask. Porcelain. Cracked. No eyes. Just a wide, smiling mouth painted in blood. And where ears should be, 2 ticking clocks. He didn't move. But Brian knew he was alive. Waiting. Watching. Brian tried to speak. Nothing came out. Mr. Tattler tilted his head. Tick. 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 Then he whispered. "Tell me a secret, Brian." Brian shook his head. He remembered the rules. Never speak to him. But Mr. Tattler leaned closer. The room warped around him. The walls melted. The ceiling screamed. And again, he whispered, "Tell me a secret, or I'll take one." Brian cried. His lips moved. He didn't want to, but he did. He whispered, "I hurt someone once." Mr. Tattler smiled. The clocks ticked faster. He stood. Unfolded. Unreal. Good boy. Then he placed a finger on Brian's forehead. Cold. Burning. Timeless. Brian screamed. The world exploded. He woke up gasping. Back in the hospital. Nurses screaming. His mom crying. Machines beeping wildly. They said he'd flatlined. For 1 minute and 33 seconds. He was dead. And then he wasn't. They called it a miracle. He called it a warning. Because when he looked in the mirror, there was a crack in his forehead. A tiny, perfect line. Shaped like a clock hand. Tick. 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 It never went away. It's been 12 years. No one talks about Red Town anymore. Not in the news. Not online. It's like it was wiped. erased. But Brian remembers. Every night, every dream, every clock tick. He's not a boy anymore. He doesn't flinch when shadows move. He doesn't cry when the lights go out. Because now, Brian doesn't fear Mr. Tattler. He understands him. He became something different. The dreams never stopped, only changed. Deeper, darker. They taught him things people aren't meant to know. Like how to walk through walls when no one's watching. How to listen to thoughts between words. How to taste memory. He never talks much anymore. Doesn't smile. He watches. Listens. Waits. Because he knows it's coming. It always comes back. One day, the clocks will stop ticking. And that's when it begins. Again. He writes. Fills notebooks with symbols. Drawings of faces with no mouths. Maps of towns that don't exist. Dates circled in red. Always the same time. 1:33 a.m. He doesn't sleep at night. Only during the day. He says it's safer that way. Easier to stay ahead of the noise. The scratching in the walls. The whisper under the sink. He still hears Mr. Tattler sometimes. Not with ears. In his bones. When the world goes quiet and the air feels thick, Brian stands very still. He waits and listens. Then the voice comes. Not angry. Not kind. Just curious. Got any more secrets, Brian? He always does. He keeps them in a locked box under his bed. Written on scraps of torn skin. They squirm sometimes. They beg to be forgotten. But Brian can't forget. He was chosen. Marked. And now he's a door. A door to Red Town. But not the one you saw. That was just a copy. A mask. The real one? It's deeper. And it's hungry. Brian doesn't fight it anymore. He prepares. He trains. He collects. Not objects. Not weapons. People. People who've seen things. Dreamed wrong. Woke up with something watching them from the mirror. He finds them. Talks to them. Listens. And when the time is right, he opens the door. Just a crack. Just enough to feed it. To keep it satisfied. For now. People disappear. Everyone says it's just coincidence. Runaways. Accidents. But Brian knows. He knows what the clocks mean. He knows what waits behind the mask. He remembers what it felt like when Mr. Tattler touched his mind. Split it open like a ripe fruit. He remembers the whisper. Good boy. And sometimes, when Brian looks in the mirror, he doesn't see himself. He sees the cracked mask. Smiling. Patient. Waiting. So he smiles back. Because now, he understands. This was never a curse. It was an invitation. A gift. And one day, you'll see it too. When you wake up at 1:33 a.m. And the room is wrong. Too still. Too silent. You'll hear the tick. Feel the pressure. And maybe, just maybe, you'll hear the whisper. Tell me a secret. If you're still watching this, you've made it out of the dream. But ask yourself, was it really just a story? Or did something feel familiar? Maybe you've had your own Mr. Tattler. A shadow you couldn't name. A presence in your dreams. Let us know in the comments. What's the scariest dream you've ever had? And hey, if you enjoyed this journey into the dream world, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Lucid Dream Portal, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Sweet dreams. We'll see you on the other side.